Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Now, usually when we talk about sports, whether it's wrestling or really any highly competitive environment, the spotlight naturally gravitates right toward the competitors. But today, we're going to completely flip the script. We're looking at the invisible foundation of any successful program, the coaches. Specifically, we're going to explore what actually supports a coach's belief that they can do their job well. Look at this quote for a second. Some days, I just don't feel confident in what I'm teaching. Man, that hits close to home, right? We're starting with this deeply relatable thought because it normalizes a feeling that almost nobody talks about out loud. This is that quiet self-doubt, that invisible, heavy weight coaches often carry home with them after a long, grueling practice. It's that inner monologue on the drive home, wondering if a specific cue landed right or if a stalled athlete's progress is somehow entirely your fault. Let's be absolutely clear right out of the gate. Having these doubts? Totally normal. It is incredibly common across all sports. It's not something to be alarmed by, and it is definitely not a clinical crisis or some diagnostic issue. Coaching is just objectively heavy work. It's a profession that literally shapes lives, and the weight that comes with that responsibility is entirely real. Just acknowledging that doubt is step one in understanding how we can better support the people holding the whistle. Okay, moving into section 1, defining the belief. What exactly is coach self-efficacy? The crucial point here is that self-efficacy isn't just a general personality trait. It's not about waking up and feeling globally self-confident as a person. No, it's a highly situational belief. The psychologist Albert Bandura coined this term, and it's basically the subjective conviction of, I can pull off this specific behavior in this exact situation. Think about it like this. Bandura's concept applies directly to coaching across these 4 specific dimensions. As a coach, you might be an absolute genius at technical instruction, teaching a flawless double leg takedown. But you might feel a little less certain when it comes to tactical instruction, motivating a discouraged kid, or character building. The research consistently shows that coaches who possess higher self-efficacy in these specific areas positively impact their athletes' performance and motivation. Simply put, supporting the coach directly supports the athlete. Which brings us to section 2, the science of coaching belief, looking at a really fascinating study of wrestling coaches in Turkey. Researchers went out and surveyed 116 wrestling coaches across 4 different Turkish cities. They used validated psychological scales to see what specific individual traits were linked to their overall coaching self-efficacy. They looked at 2 key traits. The first is psychological resilience. Think of this as emotional elasticity. It's the capacity to recover from stress, setbacks, and failure. Rather than snapping under pressure, a resilient coach bends and springs back. It's all about having your own reliable route back to your feet after a really tough day on the mat. Trait number 2 is having a proactive personality. You know the type. This describes a coach who steps in early to shape their environment. Instead of waiting around for instructions or just reacting to a crisis after it happens, this coach takes the initiative. They head problems off at the pass. Now, this is where it gets super interesting. The study found that these 2 psychological traits, resilience and a proactive personality, were linked to 46% of the variation in a coach's self-efficacy. That is a massive slice of the pie. But wait, look at that remaining 54%. That represents unmeasured factors, years of experience, the club's environment, family support, relationships with the athletes. This is a huge reminder that there is absolutely no single simple fix for coaching confidence. You can't just slap a single training program on resilience onto a team and expect it to magically solve a coach's self-doubt. It's a complex ecosystem. And quick science timeout for a crucial reminder. This is a cross-sectional correlational study. It does not prove that resilience or a proactive personality causes higher self-efficacy. It just shows that they are strongly associated with it. Psychological resilience showed a beta value of 0.42, and proactive personality was at 0.38. In the social sciences, these are moderate to fairly strong links, showing that these traits heavily overlap with a coach believing in their own abilities. But here is the absolute standout finding for me. When they broke self-efficacy down into those 4 dimensions we talked about earlier, cultivating a proactive personality showed its strongest link not with teaching technique or strategy, but with the character-building dimension of coaching. It had an R value of 0.56. For coaches who are hyper-focused on shaping the kind of people their athletes become, your own willingness to take initiative deeply correlates with your confidence in guiding their character. Now, you're probably wondering, doesn't this just get easier with time on the mat? Well, the data provides a really nuanced answer. Experience definitely builds gradually in those early levels, but a statistically significant jump in coaching confidence only crystallizes at the level 3 senior coach mark. It doesn't rise in a perfectly smooth line. The climb is very real, but the massive step change often arrives a bit later in a coach's career than we might assume. All right, section 3, translating this research to the mat and building an ecosystem of support. Remember that 54% of unmeasured factors? A huge chunk of that is a coach's environment, which means everyone has a role to play here. For coaches, yes, it means cultivating daily habits to drop your mistakes at the door and take initiative. But for clubs and administrators, it means supporting the supporters. You need to create protected time and a culture of improvement, not blame. Parents, literally just offering a few small words of appreciation at drop-off goes a shockingly long way. And athletes, simply expressing thanks, listening well, and coming back to visit your coach after you graduate, those are massive, invisible pillars that keep your coach's confidence standing tall. Leading us to our final section, supporting the people who coach, the human behind the whistle. I literally cannot get enough of this quote from the source material. Before strong athletes, coaches who can stay standing. It perfectly captures why caring for a coach's mental well-being is the ultimate foundation of a strong sports program. Yes, the resilience to bounce back and the proactivity to shape the environment are crucial, but they thrive best when the ecosystem actually values the coaches as people who need support themselves, not just as machines providing support to the athletes. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative question to chew on today. Think about the coaches who shaped you, or the ones currently working with your kids or your local club. What can you do, literally today, to help them stay standing? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a completely new perspective on the invisible weight of coaching.